Welcome, everyone, to the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities. I am Kat Klockow, your host and the editor of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities Comics Anthology. With me in the shadows is our producer, Christina Wald, and we also have Brandon Wagner?
Wagner, yes.
Yes, okay. Brandon Wagner, who did a piece about the very haunted Cincinnati Music Hall, which I'm going to share a little bit of the history with you right now. So, it is one of the most iconic facades in all of Cincinnati, and it has been for over 100 years. It looks over Washington Park in the Over the Rhine neighborhood, and it has been there for 140 years. However, the land that it sits on has had a tumultuous past, which has led to the monolithic building to be home to a few ghosts. In 1821, the 4-acre piece of land west of Elm Street and north of 12th Street became home to Ohio's first insane asylum, the Commercial Hospital and Lunatic Asylum of Ohio, which was also the parent hospital of the Orphan Asylum, the City Infirmary, the Cincinnati Hospital, and the Longview Asylum. After the 1832 cholera outbreak, a portion of this land was made into a pauper cemetery and was used for this purpose for the next 25 years. This is where the remains of those 150 who died of the ill-fated Moselle steamer, did I pronounce that right, Brandon? Yeah?
Yes,
Good.
yes, you did.
Okay. Yeah. Were buried after the 1838 explosion on the Ohio River. The Cincinnati Commercial wrote, and the Commercial was our old newspaper, when the steamer Moselle exploded, her boilers above the site of the present waterworks, and blew the skulls and limbs and blackened trunks of her passengers all over the city, so that the falling bodies fell through the roofs of houses. The remains of the victims were gathered together and buried in a spot now covered by the south end of the Horticultural Hall. According to the neighborhood lore, this is where the ghosts started haunting Elm Street, and continue to do so till this day. When the city encroachment made it unsuitable for the land to be used as a pauper's field and pest house, the previous tenants, both alive and dead, were relocated outside the city limits, the dead being moved to the notoriously haunted Spring Grove Cemetery. Yeah, that's our large garden cemetery just outside the city. In 1859, the city of Cincinnati converted the property into Elm Street Park, with park hosting expositions of all sorts until 1876, when the park was turned over to the Music Hall Association and construction started. Of course, construction turned up hundreds and hundreds of human remains and will continue to do with every renovation, including the one that they just finished a few years ago. Even in neighboring Washington Park, the excavations in 1927 uncovered 3 coffins, which were buried in the basement. In the same year, another 65 graves were uncovered, earning the site of the music hall the nickname the Valley of Death. Those remains were also reburied on site. In May 1988, another elevator shaft uncovered 207 pounds of bones encased in concrete. These bones ended up in the anthropological study at the University of Cincinnati, just a few miles north of Music Hall. The first performance of the new music hall was on May 14th, 1878, with the North and South Exposition Halls being completed September 2nd, 1879. Ever since, those who work in the building late at night have heard phantom footsteps knocking from both the ceiling and the floor, the sounds of crashing timbers or glass when nothing is amiss, and even seeing the eerie form of a shrouded woman float in the prop room of the building's sub-basement. Both guests and performers alike have witnessed phantom patrons in the old box seats or heard unearthly music playing from the hall. The box office windows will ding to alert the staff that someone's there to purchase tickets, only to find no one standing in front of the box office. So Brandon Wagner, local Cincinnati artist,
hello.
You have lent your talents to this massive undertaking of a story about the Cincinnati Music Hall. Why did you choose the Cincinnati Music Hall to cover for our anthology?
funny enough, I knew about Cincinnati Music Hall before I started learning about the wonderful haunted mysteries that abound in its halls. I performed there with my
Ooh.
high school choir once with a for I believe a Christmas show,
Oh.
and it was a wonderful time. I got to see the inside from like the stage perspective, and it is an absolutely gorgeous piece of architecture. So I had that in my belt loops
Yeah.
from just being able to take part of that. But unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to explore it too late at night to get a chance to see anything eerie or slimy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but after learning uh, extensively about the past of the building through my online research and also through a current exhibit that's going on in the museum where I work as security,
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot about like the land that the building was placed on and the
Yeah.
paupers field, and I stemming from that then just like the plethora of red string just comes out of the woodwork, and I start making pieces together, just like, oh yeah, the people from the Moselle steamer explosion would obviously be buried in a place where they couldn't identify bodies
Because they were
because
unidentifiable.
they were just shreds. It's like, what are you going to do? Um, so yeah, I easily fell in love with that aspect and stuff like that. Like haunted music halls, a wide cast of characters that float through it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I instantly fell in love with that premise.
Yeah. I learned a lot just getting the dossier ready for this project because I didn't know about the Moselle steamer explosion.
Yeah.
I knew about the Cincinnati Music Hall. I knew about it being on a pauper cemetery because I had seen shows about it when I was living in Indiana.
Mhm.
So moving here, I'm like, yeah, the Cincinnati Music Hall's haunted, but did not know about the steamer explosion.
Yeah.
So learning about that from your comic, I was just like, oh, oh, that's just an entire level of crazy that I didn't expect, and just more and more literally raining down onto the city.
Yeah, I discovered that that was like one of the first things I found when I was looking into like music hall, and it just like directed me to that, and I was like, how
Mm-hmm.
are these connected? Oh, this is like 20 years before the museum was built.
Yeah,
Like before like the whole exposition hall was built.
yeah.
um and I thought that was really fascinating. It was also interesting to discover that uh the exposition halls held like essentially what would end up being the World's Fair in Chicago
Mm-hmm.
for years before it was adapted into a performance stage.
Yeah, yeah. I learned that was really interesting. Just learning about how all these major cities had exposition halls and areas,
Mhm.
and then the World's Fair coming around. And the one in Chicago is just particularly well known because of H.H. Holmes. So
Yeah. Yeah.
stalking everyone in his murder castle.
Oh, what are you gonna do?
Oh, what are you gonna do? Uh, so there's a lot of history with the Cincinnati Music Hall. How did you manage to condense it the way that you did? You put it into 6 pages.
Yes.
6 wonderfully illustrated black and white, like they're penny dreadfuls from the Victorian era.
Thank you very much. I wanted to kind of tell this like haunted mansion-esque story of getting the band back together.
I
so
like
so
that. That's a good
so I
reference.
so I had this idea of like, come foolish mortals and check out this wonderful show we have for you. We've got orphans in the basement. We've got that ghost in the rafters, and we've got the main attraction, the woman in white, wafting through the halls and scaring the security guards.
And since you are a security guard, you got like connection
Yes.
to that.
Yes, but in a contemporary art museum, you deal with a whole lot of different monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I like how you use the stark black and white. Now, is this traditionally drawn, or did you use is it digitally drawn?
I drew all 6 pages in Procreate on my iPad. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely fell in love with that software. I've been using it ever since. I've completely given up paper, and I'm kicking myself that I haven't started doing this sooner.
Oh, yeah.
It is such a drastic change in work ethic, and I love every minute.
Yeah, I like it. I like Procreate, and a lot of the more recent programs have managed to mimic how ink spreads on paper a lot better
Yes.
than before.
Mm-hmm.
So Procreate's pretty good for that. There's a few others, like Adobe Fresco is also awesome for its watercolors.
Oh,
So yeah, but I like how you put it all together, and it
thank you.
flows so well. And it like going back to the Mosul exploding, you get to see limbs
Yeah, yeah.
raining down on people in such a cartoony fashion.
Yeah. It was such like a drastic opening
It
to
is.
like start off. I wanted to do that first so that people would be like, wait, this is about music hall? I'd be like, wait a second.
There's so much history, and I remember. Have you ever done one of the ghost hunts, either in Music Hall or around Washington Park at OTR?
No, not an OTR. I did take a ghost tour in uh cemetery. I've already forgot Spring Grove.
Yeah, Spring Grove.
And
It's our lovely cemetery.
it's actually very beautiful.
It is very beautiful. It's a
it-
sculpture cemetery.
yes,
So,
a
like Mount
lot of
Auburn in Boston.
yes, and a lot of big Cincinnati names as well, like Procter and Gamble are like parked across a lake from each other.
Yes.
I don't know if that was by
Eternally
design.
just waving at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
How's the soap business, Proctor? It's fine, Gamble.
It's fine. I'm dead. It's like my gravestone is a bench. Come say hi. One of them is, but there's so much history in the macabre side of Cincinnati.
Yeah, because Washington Park also was built on part of this pauper cemetery. And when they were building the garage that's underneath it now, they just were excavating all these bones. And the pauper cemetery, it's rumored, was one of the favorite places for the University of Cincinnati to do body snatching.
Of course.
So Cincinnati has a very healthy history of body snatching corpses for for all the medical students. It's just a rumor.
Of course.
It's just a rumor.
A lot of aspiring Frankensteins.
Yes. Have you seen, you mentioned before you haven't seen anything spooky at Music Hall.
No. I guess because I was always in a crowd, no one came out. But I did get a chance to rehearse there in the dark, and it is very eerily quiet. Like it's because looking back on it now, I wish I checked the upper rafters a bit more to look for like the Box 9 ghost, the famous Box 9 ghost, when after it was originally turned into a music stage, the owner brought his son at the time to check out the place, and the son points to Box 9 and says, "Look, there's a man, he's waving at me." And by the time he looks up, there's no one there. And I love that story, so I had to include him in my excerpt for the anthology.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's one of the really well-known ghost stories from Music Hall, which makes me wonder what's going to happen now that the box seats have all been removed.
Yes.
Yeah. So are we going to still see him? Did he disappear forever? Time will tell.
I like to hope they can adapt, but like we can.
They've been there for 140 years.
Right. Like, why stop now?
Yeah. So you are from Cincinnati, correct? Do you have any good hometown haunts you can share with us?
As far as hometown haunts, no, I'm way too much of a homebody, unfortunately, to really get into it. But I do know two very popular places that people like to go to every year around Halloween time.
Okay.
The Dent Schoolhouse is a frisbee toss from my house.
Oh.
I live very close to that, and the USS Nightmare, which is a paddle boat that they bring on the Ohio River and park it right next to Newport in Kentucky, right across the river. And it's the original boat that had a tragic accident that caused it to split in half sideways
Ooh.
down the middle. It ran into one of the bridges, and it cracked down the middle, and it was decommissioned. And they
So
brought
it's like right down the middle.
not like lengthwise, but like right on the side.
Half.
Yeah, it ran into a pole, like at a bridge, and it got severed. And it was decommissioned for the longest time, and they brought it back as like a haunted house attraction, and we eat it up every year. It's the best. It's the best. I got to go once with a date, and best idea I've ever had.
That's why they're really popular.
Exactly. But no, it's a really good time.
Now, I do hear the Dent Schoolhouse is haunted.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was a legit schoolhouse.
Yes, it was. It closed, and they never use it. It's only used as a haunted attraction nowadays. It is untouched, like 11 months of the year. They only bring it up again to turn it into a haunted house.
Right.
But it is completely untouched. The facade is entirely the same. There's always the same like yellow school bus that's crashed out front. It's I pass it every time I want to go to the movies. It's always there.
It's always there.
It's always there. And it reappears every October. So.
Just like pumpkins.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The crash school bus is in front of the Dent Schoolhouse.
It's always there. Pumpkin spice lattes, Dent Schoolhouse every year. All like clockwork.
I have never been to either of those attractions.
It's an absolute blast. It's a good time, and they get really creative.
Yeah, I hear that they do, and I don't know if the USS Nightmare is haunted, though I do wonder if the crash killed anybody.
I'm pretty sure it did.
It sounds like it depends on when it happened. That one I'm not so well.
They show footage of the crash in like when you're in line waiting for the attraction. You're like, yeah, it's pretty rough. But yeah, the USS Nightmare is what it's called now. But I'm sure if you look it up, you can get like the wiki of the history.
I'm gonna have to look into this more.
It's quite a joy that they bring it every year.
Yes. Hey, Christina, it could be a topic on our podcast. Talk about the USS Nightmare and its history. This nightmarish history.
They talk about like the captain who was a psycho or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And for those of you who aren't around Cincinnati, it's very much known as an international port, and we had a lot of just steamboats. Steamboats are the big thing for Cincinnati. So even the Reds baseball stadium has, what is it? It's painted. No, it's not painted. It's the box seats for, I think, people who really love the Reds. It's built to look like a steamboat. Yeah,
there's it's like an advertisement sign, but it has two paddle steamboat smokestacks that shoot red fireworks every time the Reds score. And
then also has the paddle too.
Yes, there is a paddle, and of course, if you're looking directly at it, if you're in the top seats, you can see the river, and you can see even more paddle boats beside it. Cincinnati is really committed to that style of boat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you can go on a boat tour up and down the Ohio River, and I know we do have a port authority here. So.
Yes, we do.
And we launch our fireworks off of barges from the Ohio River. So.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. Well, thank you, Brandon, for joining us.
Thank you.
It was fun chatting with you about your part of the project and the history and just nerding out over haunted houses. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and I'm very excited to be a part of this project with you and everyone else. And yes, looking forward to maybe doing this again next season.
Yeah. Maybe we can all go to the Dent Schoolhouse to celebrate.
That's you know what? I would love to see Tim in the Dent Schoolhouse. Like, absolutely. I would love to see that live. I'm going just
I
for
don't
that.
know if he will be scared or unimpressed.
Yeah.
I'm just...
That's true. That's really
know.
true. Oh, man.
And on that note, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities. I'm Kat Klockow, the editor and host. With me is Christina Wald, and you can follow us on social media. You can follow us at Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities on Instagram and at Cin Cabinet Curio on Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook, and look forward to our Kickstarter coming out in October 2020. That's everything. So good night, everyone. Happy hauntings.